I hated Lee Cronin's The Mummy. If you're curious as to why, stick around for the spoiler and hype-free review. What's up, cretins? What's up, creeps? My name is Chris. I am the only person talking horror on the internet. Hit the sub, help me get to 5K before my 2-year anniversary this June. Lee Cronin, the esteemed director of a whopping 2 other movies, has apparently earned the honor of having his name precede the titles of his films with Lee Cronin's The Mummy. He follows his debut, The Hole in the Ground, the story of a broken family fighting evil forces as their child has been replaced by a demon, and his follow-up, Evil Dead Rise, the story of a broken family fighting evil forces as their mother has become possessed by a demon, with Lee Cronin's The Mummy, the story of a family that are reunited with their daughter who has been missing for 8 years. And if you hope that broken family is gonna fight some evil forces because their daughter has become possessed by a demon, buddy, you may think that you're not gonna get that in a Mummy movie, but let me remind you, this isn't just a Mummy movie, it's Lee Cronin's The Mummy. So there's your movie. Alright, let's bring this up so we can break this down. In his 3rd attempt at making the same movie, Lee Cronin shits out an unnecessary and irrational take on what The Mummy is. And that take? It's essentially the same things that he did in Evil Dead Rise. It's the same take on possession, it's the same take on locking the character away, same distorted voice, same conflicts. You may have heard that it's brutal or unforgiving or just plain cruel. And let's just get this out of the way. It's admittedly not an easy watch. But this isn't brutality like in From When Evil Lurks or Hellraiser, where there's something behind it. This is brutality for brutality's sake, i.e. edgelord bullshit. It's closer to something that a 16-year-old who's seen a Serbian film too many times would make for his film class to show how edgy he is than a story that somebody would honestly want to tell. How it's a Mummy movie, I have no fucking idea. And I was more than open to it being a different take. I was excited about it being a different take. This is not a different take. This is an Evil Dead movie, a bad Evil Dead movie, worse than his previous Evil Dead movie that needed a different title because he wasn't asked to make another Evil Dead movie. 6 out of 15. Midsummer's Jack Rayner and Spanish actress Laia Costa lead the cast, and they do what they can, but it's woefully apparent that they're starved for some form of depth to their characters so that they can do something. But the remaining cast, it would be generous to call them forgettable. And I don't think it's any of these people's faults, but the fact that nobody was willing to say, I wouldn't react that way, nobody would react that way, didn't save it where it could have. 7 out of 15. The screenplay sucks. Outside of being unashamedly self-indulgent, it is unabashedly amateur. The characters have nothing to say because they're not written to be people, they're written to be reactions to situation. Calling them flat would be an overestimation. The dialogue ranges from forgettable to edgelord bullshit to downright problematic. I'm sure that Cronin was happy to pat himself on the back for writing, "Don't worry, Grandma, it's fun to be dead." But that line, as stupid as it is, goes as far as to undermine the film. And if you don't think that's a bad line, that's fine. Try this on for size, because I nearly walked out when 10-year-old Katie mischievously says to her 15-year-old brother, "Hey, baby brother, wanna come help me get undressed?" And he, possessed, ravenously starts breaking down a door to get to his 10-year-old sister to undress her. That really happens. How the fuck is that acceptable? If you want to excuse it because she's talking about bandages, No, there's not a world where it's permissible for a 10-year-old girl to be delivering that line. I don't give a fuck about the circumstances. It's probably a 4 out of 15 script to begin with. It's boring, it's overly long, and it's poorly told, but I'm not awarding shit for points when Lee Cronin writes a line that feels like he's dog whistling to PDF files. 0 out of 15, fuck you. Lee Cronin's The Mummy is not a scary movie because Lee Cronin doesn't know how to develop atmosphere, nor does he know how to build suspense. He knows how to show you a foot and then show you how a foot can be mangled. He knows how to show you teeth and then show you how gross teeth can be. You'll wince, you'll be grossed out. If you classify that as a scare, that's what's scary to you. But even then, it's nothing higher than a 3 out of 10. The aesthetic of the film is a copy-paste of Evil Dead Rise with a sepia filter over it. But this has no visual identity that separates it from Evil Dead Rise outside of them, like, showing a pyramid sometimes. 4 out of 10. The story: one of a family who lost a child 8 years ago and is now trying to restructure that family to include her after living without her. That's an interesting story. But that's not the story that Cronin chooses to tell. He treats a very humane situation with zero humanity. He's more interested in trying to convince us how the high-end historical artifacts black market trade would be the perfect cover for hiding a body. His concerns aren't with what Katie endured or with what the family endured. His interest is challenging what you can endure. Plus, there's things like, very mild spoiler, Katie learns Morse code at the beginning of the movie. And after she comes back, there's a moment where she's clacking her teeth together, and her father instantly knows that it's Morse code the first time that it happens. That is objectively bad storytelling. That's something that should be happening throughout the movie, and you give the audience a chance to discover it with the characters. That gets worse when the dad has to consult a guide to translate the Morse code, but later in the movie, he knows it by heart. And that's not all. There's a moldy, rotten spot on the floor that's established so that it can be crawled through later in the film, serves no purpose, is never explored or explained otherwise. When the parents are divided on what to do about Katie, they lash out at one another despite it being like an hour into the movie and there not even being a hint of the family having any kind of issues like before or afterwards. Character that we meet later in the film gets questioned at one point, and to explain why she can't answer, she opens her mouth to reveal that her tongue was cut out. Literally same scene, like 15 seconds later, she starts talking, just with like a minor speech impediment that you barely even notice, so what was the point of establishing that her tongue was cut out? And that's not even getting into the ask of the audience to accept that this is a mummy movie, because I don't want that to be the thing that I dwell on. Cronin is objectively a piss-poor storyteller, and that's only amplified by the fact that he's got Shyamalan syndrome, where he was too successful too quickly, and he overestimates his own capabilities or underestimates the audience's intelligence. Here's your wake-up call, dude. 2 out of 10 at best. If you're there for the kills and the kills alone, there's not many, but yeah, they're brutal. Again, shallow and unfounded, very much it doesn't matter if the audience cares about this person, look how hardcore it looks, but brutal. The sheer visuals are probably an 8 out of 10. I'm gonna knock it back to maybe a 6 out of 10 due to the infrequency versus your expectation if you're going for kills. And probably further down to a 4 because of the inconsequential nature of said kills. Yeah, 4. Good news, this is a 5 out of 5 on the originality scale for a mummy movie. A completely unexplored take on the story. The problem is, it's not a mummy movie. Further problem is, it's 100% an Evil Dead movie. Straight down to the distorted recording explaining the past of the situation playing on a tape player. And further problem is, it's 100% a retread of his Evil Dead movie. So I guess I'll afford it a point for at least trying to convince the world that you did something. You didn't. 1 out of 5. I never want to watch this shit again. 0 out of 5. If my level of enjoyment isn't blaringly obvious at this point, let me share this with you. I don't know if I have before, but I put a stopwatch on my cell phone when I go to see movies. It gives me an idea as to where we are and how the film is moving. It also affords me the opportunity to accurately tell you that something happens in the first 20 minutes, blah blah, etc. And it also lets me say with absolute accuracy that I was done with Lee Cronin's The Mummy exactly 1 hour and 11 minutes into it, and I had to agonize sitting through the remaining 64 fucking minutes. 0 out of 5. So, overall, these add up to a possible 100 points, and when I chainsaw this off, your massa score for Lee Cronin's The Mummy is 27 out of 100. Lee Cronin's lack of understanding of how to tell this story results in a heartless, brainless, soulless pile of shit, and hopefully he can resolve this before presenting the same movie a 4th time, presumably rebranded as an Exorcist sequel. Excuse me, Lee Cronin's The Exorcist. Kindred Spirits, Evil Dead Rise, a 14-year-old boy's Evil Dead fan film, The Exorcist Believer. Fuck you. That's all I got for you, cretins. That's gonna do it for today, creeps. Do all these things. Let me know if you saw Lee Cronin's The Mummy and what you thought of it right over here. I'm more than fine with you liking it. I just didn't. Because as always, this is all just a matter of opinion. See it yourself, make your own decisions, remain critical, support horror.